The Revenge of Shinobi sits in the company of Phantasy Star 2 and Ghouls and Ghosts as one of the Mega Drive's early landmark games. It's also a completely original sequel to the arcade game Shinobi. It was built from the ground up to run on the Mega Drive, which is probably why it's so damn good. In The Revenge of Shinobi, the criminal organization Zed has reorganized to become Neo-Zed, and has taken revenge on Joe Musashi by killing his master and kidnapping his wife Naoko. What follows is a globe-hopping trip to rescue Joe's woman and destroy his enemies. Gameplay is really similar to the original Shinobi. Joe's weapons include shurikens, swords, and hand-to-hand combat. He's also capable of using 4 types of ninjutsu magic: Ikazuchi, which protects him from damage; Karyu, which summons a flaming dragon to incinerate his enemies; Fushin, which allows Joe to jump higher and further; and Mijin, which results in an explosive sacrifice costing Joe 1 life but damaging all enemies on screen. Unlike a lot of other action games, there's actually a heavy resource management element to Revenge of Shinobi. Joe can very quickly run out of shurikens, meaning you constantly have to assess each situation and decide if it's worth using up your precious distance weapons, or if it's worth risking close combat. Joe also has a mid-air somersault attack that fires an array of shurikens at his enemies, though again, this is really draining on your weapon count. Unless, of course, you use the famous infinite shuriken trick I did at the beginning of this video. The Revenge of Shinobi marks the first appearance of composer Yuzo Koshiro in a Sega game. Koshiro had already started making a name for himself through his earlier work on Nihon Falcom games like Dragon Slayer and Ys, but Revenge of Shinobi really marks his coming out party for most Western gamers. Just listening to Revenge of Shinobi for a bit, you realize that it sounds unlike any Mega Drive game before it. Koshiro would go on to become famous for his soundtracks in other games like ActRaiser, the Streets of Rage series, Beyond Oasis, and Shenmue. Besides being a fantastic game with excellent tunes, Revenge of Shinobi is notable for one other thing: playing fast and loose with other people's intellectual property. Play through a game and you start to notice an awful lot of homages to various other series and characters. For example, the title screen image looks an awful lot like Sonny Chiba's Hattori Hanzo from Shadow Warriors. This flame-throwing character bears more than a passing resemblance to Sylvester Stallone's depiction of John Rambo. This boss seems clearly based off of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and ultimately reveals itself to be a Terminator-like cyborg. And perhaps the most surprising examples, this shape-shifting boss first takes the form of a slightly miscolored Spider-Man. Once he takes enough damage, he morphs into another miscolored superhero. This time it's none other than Batman. And finally, this gigantic boss at the end of the second last stage looks like he should be going on a radioactive rampage through the Japanese countryside. I don't know if Sega itself decided to right these wrongs, or if they were faced with the threat of lawsuits from the various IP owners. Either way, much like Mystic Defender before it, subsequent runs of the Revenge of Shinobi silently changed certain visuals in the game. Revision 1 replaced John Rambo with a slightly older, balder-looking man. It also swiped out the Batman boss with more of a mutant man-bat creature, which actually bears a striking resemblance to Go Nagai's Devilman character. The Spider-Man doppelganger looks as though he's had his unitard dyed to the web-slinger's proper colors. I have a theory that Sega had already officially licensed Spider-Man at the time of this revision, though the legal text for that license wouldn't appear in the game until Revision 2. You'll also notice that Spider-Man no longer morphs into the Man-Bat when he's defeated. Now he just runs away. After all, we can't have a Marvel superhero morphing into a DC superhero, right? By Revision 3, Toho must have noticed the game, because the Godzilla boss has been replaced by a more generic skeletal dinosaur thing. This was the way the game stayed until 2009, when Revision 4 was released on the Wii's Virtual Console service. Here, Spider-Man has changed into a solid pink uniform, probably because Activision now held the Spider-Man license, and Sonny Chiba's likeness has finally been removed from the title screen. I think this stuff is pretty interesting, if only because some people's memories of this great game are slightly different than others. Remember, this stuff wasn't necessarily common knowledge back in the day. Not a lot of Google searches or Wikipedia browsing happening in 1989.
Your secrets, if you really look at yourself, you would be speechless. What happened to being doctors and teachers? What happened to being your brother's keeper? Nowadays, kids more worried about